Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where I share creepy and scary stories that will give you chills. If you love horror and spooky tales, make sure to subscribe and join me every week for a new story. Let's get into the dark side together. Arrival. That was the only word printed on the rusted welcome sign at the edge of the dirt road. Not welcome to Pine Echo. Not please drive carefully. Just arrival, half covered in moss and dried sap, like it had been waiting. Max leaned out the van window, squinting up at the sign as the late afternoon sun bled through the tree canopy. "This is it," he said, forcing a grin. "We're officially off the grid." Behind him in the old van, his friends groaned in unison. "Off the grid sounds cute until phone dies and the bears show up," said Danny, flicking her lighter open and shut. She hadn't stopped fidgeting since they left the city. Her nervous energy made the others jumpy, though no one would say it. "You're more likely to get eaten by Max's cooking than a bear," said Jaden, laughing from the back seat. "Keep talking, and you're getting canned beans all weekend," Max replied, pulling the van forward onto a narrower, bumpier trail. The road twisted up through towering pine trees that pressed in tighter the deeper they drove. The sky disappeared behind them. The air grew colder. Still, unnatural. In the passenger seat, Sarah glanced at the GPS, which blinked red with a single word: no signal. "We sure this is the right place?" she asked. Max nodded, though he looked less certain than before. "Old forestry land. My uncle used to take me up here as a kid. Said no one's been camping here in years. It's perfect." Behind them, Ava whispered something too soft to hear. She had been quiet the whole trip, always watching the trees, like they might blink. By the time they reached the clearing, the sun had dipped low enough that shadows stretched unnaturally long across the pine needle-covered ground. The clearing was circular. Neat. Too neat. Like something had swept the area clean. Max threw the van in park. "Home sweet home," he said, though his voice cracked as he stepped out. They unpacked in silence. Not the comforting kind, like snow or sleep. This silence had weight. Pressure. As if the trees themselves were listening and expecting. Max dragged the cooler to the center of the clearing, trying to break the quiet with his usual bravado. "All right, 10 people to the left, firewood team to the right. Let's make it pretty." No one answered. The group moved, unspoken and stiff. Danny started pitching her tent near the edge of the clearing, too close to the woods. Sarah noticed, but didn't say anything. She was focused on Ava, who hadn't moved since they arrived. The girl stood near the van, staring into the tree line, her face pale and unreadable. "Ava," Sarah called softly. "You okay?" Ava blinked and turned slowly. "Did you hear it?" "Hear what?" But Ava just shook her head and walked away. They made a fire by dusk. By the time darkness truly fell, it felt like the forest swallowed all the warmth the flames offered. The air turned sharp, bitter. The pine trees loomed like silent witnesses, black fingers clawing at the sky. Max passed around beers, trying to shake the mood. Jaden offered ghost stories. Bad ones. Back in college, a friend of mine swore they saw a shadow figure follow them for weeks. Thought it was in their apartment. Even woke up with scratches. He grinned. Turns out it was just their cat and a broken smoke detector. No one laughed. The fire popped. A log cracked, sending sparks upward. That's when they all heard it. A voice, whispered, faint, coming from the woods. Not words, not human, but unmistakable. They froze. "Did you?" Sarah began. "Why, yeah," Danny whispered. "I heard it too." Max stood quickly. "Probably animals. Or wind. This place echoes like hell." But no wind moved the trees, and the air was still. Then Ava spoke. "I think it's inside the woods." Everyone turned to her. Her eyes were wide, locked on something deep between the pines. "There's something watching." Jaden laughed nervously. "All right, too much beer. Maybe we should." Snap. A twig broke just beyond the firelight. Too heavy to be a squirrel. Too deliberate to be random. Max grabbed a flashlight and pointed it toward the trees. Nothing, just blackness, until a shape moved. Slow, tall, a blur behind bark. gone before the light could catch it. "Nope," Jaden said, backing up. "I vote we sleep in the van." "No one's sleeping in the van," Max said. "We came to disconnect, right? Just maybe we set a second fire. Brighter. Nothing likes light." But Ava whispered again, "It doesn't care about the light." Later that night, Danny couldn't sleep. The tent walls were too thin, the air too cold. She kept hearing breathing, not hers, not anyone's from the camp. Heavy, behind her tent, just inches away. She turned on her phone flashlight and unzipped the flap. Nothing, just trees. But in the dirt near the edge of her tent, footprints, bare footprints, too long, toes pointed outward. No human shape matched it. She shivered and zipped the tent shut again, curling into her sleeping bag and pretending not to hear the breathing return. Back at the fire, Max sat alone. The others had retreated to their tents. He poked the embers with a stick, tried to stay awake. He thought about his uncle. The man used to tell him not to go too deep into the woods. "Stay near the clearing," he'd say. "If the trees stop moving, it's already too late." He hadn't understood what that meant, not until tonight, because the trees, they weren't swaying anymore. No wind, no movement, stillness, except one tree. It looked wrong, not dead, not alive, just off. Max stood slowly. That's when he noticed the bark. It wasn't bark, it was skin, and in the middle of it, a face, his own face, screaming, filled Max's ears, but no sound left his mouth. His body refused to move. The face embedded in the tree. His face rippled like water. It blinked, opened its mouth in a perfect mirror of his own expression. And then it smiled. But the smile didn't belong to him. It was wider, rotten, filled with tiny, twitching mouths. He stumbled backward, tripping over a root that hadn't been there before. Branches rustled behind him. Too fast, too many, like dozens of feet scattering through dry needles. He spun the flashlight toward the tree again. Gone. Just bark, as if it had never been there. Max didn't tell the others. The next morning, he said it was a dream. Night panic, a trick of the shadows. But he packed early. Too early. And didn't meet anyone's eyes. Sarah noticed first. "You okay?" "Fine. We just shouldn't stay too long. We planned 3 days. Let's do 1. Maybe 2. Jaden frowned. Did something happen?" Max hesitated. Then, "I just don't like the feel of this place." No one argued. Not yet. That afternoon, Danny wandered too far. She said she was looking for firewood, but really, she needed space. The group's tension was starting to eat at her nerves, especially Ava's silence and Max's sudden jumpiness. She walked deeper, following the slope of the hill where the trees grew tighter together. The deeper she went, the quieter everything became. No birds, no wind, then music, a soft, hollow humming, coming from beneath her feet. Danny knelt down, placed her ear to the ground. She heard breathing. Then the music stopped, and someone whispered, just below the dirt, "Please dig. I'm still alive." She screamed and ran back to camp, her arms scratched from branches, hair tangled. When she tried to explain, the others stared. Ava didn't. She just said, "They bared themselves to escape." No one asked what that meant. That night, Jaden disappeared. He had gone to relieve himself by the tree lean. Never came back. They searched. His flashlight lay broken at the edge of the clearing. The pine needles around it were melted, not burned, just gone, like they had never existed. Sarah found something else. A tooth, still wet, embedded in the bark of a tree. She didn't tell Max. Not until the next night, when Jaden's voice came from the woods, begging, crying, "Guys, please, it's cold." Max held her back. "That's not him." "How do you know?" "Because he said my name last." Jaden would have said it first. Then the voice changed, more distorted. "Max, you remember me, don't you?" He stepped back. "No." Sarah looked at him. "What is it?" "I think." He swallowed. I think this place knows us. The fire dimmed. Ava sat by the edge of the circle, drawing shapes in the dirt. Sarah looked over her shoulder. Tiny faces. Hundreds of them, each one smiling. That's what the faces were doing, but not with joy. They smiled like they were stretched too far, skin warped into shapes meant to mimic human expression, but twisted, unnatural. Sarah pulled her hand away from the dirt, trembling. Ava, what are these? Ava didn't look up. Her finger kept moving, sketching more tiny ovals, more grins. They're watching, she said quietly. They always watch first. They only come closer once you see them. Max stepped closer. See who? The pines, she said. That night they didn't sleep. Not really. The fire hissed and spat, burning too low no matter how much wood they added. The trees around them felt closer, as if they leaned in while no one was looking. Max stayed awake with a knife in his hand. Sarah kept checking the van, praying the battery hadn't died. Ava just sat, staring into the woods, like something out there was whispering just for her. Then at 2:47 a.m., they heard Jaden's voice again. Only this time, it wasn't begging. It was laughing, mocking. Remember when we were kids, Max? Remember the lake? You left me then, too. Sarah grabbed Max's arm. What is he talking about? Max's face was pale. That's not Jaden. How do you know? Because he drowned when we were 12. He never came back. I never told anyone. The voice stopped. From the woods came a new sound, like branches bending in rhythm, like something massive was moving, not stomping, not crashing, flowing. Sarah grabbed a flashlight and swept the beam across the trees. Nothing. Then movement. Too fast. Too tall. Gone again. At dawn, Ava finally spoke again. We should leave, she said. But we can't. Not until it finishes. Finishes what? Max asked. Ava looked at the pines, remembering. Max didn't sleep again. That morning, he walked back to the van, unlocked the trunk. He pulled out something none of them had seen him pack, a folded, worn notebook. He sat on the bumper, flipped it open. Sarah came over. What's that? He hesitated, then showed her the first page. It was a hand-drawn map. The clearing, trails, even symbols marking trees. Years ago, Max said, my uncle took me here. Just once. He brought this with him. Said it was made by someone who went missing in the 60s. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Missing? Max nodded. Whole group. Same place. Same exact clearing. He turned to the last page. In frantic red ink, do not look at his face. It shows you your own. The wind picked up. Sarah looked back toward the trees. One pine near the edge of the clearing, it moved. Just one. And at its base was a shape, taller than a man. Skin like bark. Arms too long. Faceless, but not blank. Its surface rippled. Tiny faces forming and melting, smiling, screaming, twitching. Max whispered, don't run. Don't move. If you don't see it. But it was too late. Ava was already walking toward it, and it smiled, not with a mouth. It had no lips, no jaw, just a surface that moved like water under stretched skin. But somehow, it smiled, and everyone felt it. Ava walked slowly, hypnotically, as if drawn by a force none of them could see. Sarah called out, voice sharp with panic. Ava, stop. Ava didn't. Max leapt forward, grabbed her arm. Don't look at it. She twisted in his grip, face pale and distant. I have to, she whispered. It remembers me. It showed me my brother. You don't have a brother. Yes, I do. Her eyes fluttered. Had. She turned back toward the thing in the trees. Max yanked her away just in time, and the creature melted back into the forest. No movement, no sound, only the shivering in their bones. The group broke apart that day. Ava refused to speak anymore. She sat on a fallen log near the fire and drew faces into dirt. But now they weren't random. Max noticed. The faces had detail now. Familiar detail. One looked like Jaden. One like Sarah. One like him. He didn't say anything. That night, Danny insisted she was done. I'm not dying here. I don't care if I have to walk 30 miles through bear shit. I'm leaving. Sarah tried to calm her down. We'll leave together. In the morning. As a group. But Danny was already grabbing her pack. She vanished into the woods before they could stop her. Midnight passed. Max, Sarah, and Ava sat by the fire in silence. Then they heard it. Not footsteps. Humming. A child's voice. Soft. Echoing. A lullaby. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for the flashlight. What is that? Max didn't answer. They all turned toward the sound. Then the humming stopped. A single whisper followed. So quiet it felt like it crawled into their ears. Buried beneath the pines. They didn't sleep. By dawn, Danny hadn't returned. Max told them to stay by the fire. I'll go find her. Alone. I'll mark trees and come back in 1 hour. Sarah refused. We stay together. But Ava whispered, that's what it wants. It waits for us to split. They went anyway. Max carved small X marks into tree trunks as they moved deeper. They found Danny's pack torn open near a dry creek. Next to it, her boots, neatly placed side by side. No blood, no drag marks, no sign of struggle. Only a small wooden doll, its face smiling. Sarah picked it up and dropped it immediately. The smile had moved. Ava began to hum. The same tune they had heard the night before. Sarah snapped. Ava, how do you know that song? Ava blinked slowly. My mother used to sing it. In the dark. You said your mother was deaf. Ava looked confused for a moment. I did. Max stepped between them. We're going back. Now. But the X carvings were gone. Every tree looked the same. And then they realized the shadows had moved. Sunlight was coming from the wrong direction. Back at the camp, or what should have been camp, there was no van, no tents, no fire pit, only pine trees. Endless. Sarah gasped, spinning around. We didn't walk that far. We didn't. This is wrong. This is wrong. Then a voice behind her. Not Danny, not Jaden. Her own voice. Wrong is remembering. She turned. No one was there. Only a face carved into a tree. Her own. Crying. Max clutched the notebook. He flipped back to the page with the red ink. This time, there was more written. New words that hadn't been there before. You were being rewritten. Sarah looked over his shoulder. What does that mean? Max whispered. It's not just showing us things. It's changing them. Changing us. That night, Sarah dreamed she was back in her childhood home. Only it was burned. Charred walls. Empty halls. She wandered through it, calling for someone she couldn't name. In the mirror, she saw her reflection smiling, but her mouth wasn't moving. Then her reflection whispered, You've already died. The woods just haven't told you yet. She woke screaming. Max and Ava were gone. Only footprints led away from the fire. Dozens of them. Some large, some tiny, some shaped like hands. Sarah stood alone. The trees stared down. And somewhere far away, something smiled. The word echoed in Sarah's head, like it was being whispered from inside her skull. The fire had gone out. The forest was still. Too still. She turned in slow circles, hoping to hear a voice. A crunch of footsteps. Anything. Nothing. Not even birds. The air around her felt heavy, like the trees were pushing it down onto her shoulders. Max was gone. Ava was gone. The only things that remained were the ashes and a dozen trails of footprints, some too small to be human, others far too large. And the worst ones? They had no shape at all, just drag lines like something being pulled along the forest floor. Sarah backed away from them and clutched her chest, trying to remember how to breathe. Her pulse was racing, her mind spiraling. They left me, she whispered. But a deeper voice replied from behind a tree. No, they were taken. She spun toward the voice. No one was there, but carved into the bark was another face. Max's face. His mouth open, screaming, his eyes gouged out. The bark beneath the carving was bleeding. Sarah stumbled back and ran, blindly, without thought, without direction. Trees whipped past her. Branches toward her arms and legs. Her lungs burned. And still, the whispering followed. Not with words, not with sound, but with memory. The woods changed as she ran. The tall pines twisted into strange shapes, curling inward like ribs. Moss glistened with oily, red sheen. She tripped on roots that hadn't been there a second ago. And every time she looked back, the forest seemed closer. Breathing, she ran until she couldn't anymore, collapsed into her knees in a clearing. But not the clearing. This one was smaller, overgrown, forgotten. At its center stood a massive, hollow tree. Its bark was blackened, scorched, and inside it, carved into the trunk, was a door. Not a real one, painted in red. Above it, in crude letters, "Open only if you remember." Sarah stared, chest heaving. "Remember what?" she whispered. A voice answered from inside the tree. "Your death." She staggered backward, tripping over a stone. The door didn't open. It pulsed once, like something inside was breathing. Sarah shook her head. "This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't." Then she saw herself, standing across the clearing. Same clothes, same wounds, same eyes. Only that version of her wasn't afraid. It smiled. "You shouldn't have run." Sarah turned to bolt, but the world twisted. Trees snapped into different angles. The sky turned black, even though it was midday. Shadows bled upward, and every sound disappeared again. Alone, the word came again, but this time from her own mouth. Her double was gone, but in the place where it stood was a mirror. She stepped forward slowly and looked. Her reflection wasn't smiling. It wasn't even her. It was a face made from hundreds of smaller faces, eyes blinking, mouths twitching, all layered and stretching across something wearing her skin. It mouthed a word. "Stay." Sarah screamed and threw a rock at the mirror. Glass shattered, but behind it, Max, hanging upside down from a pine tree, eyes wide, mouth sewn shut, still breathing. She ran to him, climbed the twisted roots that held him aloft. "Max, I'm here. But he shook his head violently. Muffled moans escaped his mouth. Behind her, a branch cracked. She turned. The creature stood less than 5 meters away, still, watching, its face blank, but shifting. Now Sarah could see Ava's eyes on it, Jaden's mouth, Danny's jaw, and something else, something old, ancient, not a face, not even human, a memory of fear. The sky pulsed red. Max stopped struggling. Sarah turned back. He was gone, not vanished, just absorbed, like he had been erased from that space and time. Only a smear of blood where he'd hung. She screamed and ran again, but there were no more paths, no more directions. The forest had closed, and she was once again alone. The forest had closed itself like a mouth around her. No wind, no exit, only the trees, too close, too tall, stretching into a sky that pulsed with the color of dried blood. Sarah's breathing grew shallow. She turned in every direction, spinning slowly, searching for anything familiar. But the forest had changed. The trees were no longer trees. Their trunks were veined, pulsing. Their bark peeled back in flaps that moved like skin in the breeze. Faces blinked from within the knots, some crying, some smiling, and some whispering. One of them looked like her mother, another like her first-grade teacher. None of them were supposed to be there, and yet they were. She took a trembling step forward, then another, guided by instinct more than logic. Her mind felt like it was unraveling, like her thoughts no longer belonged to her. With every step, voices filled her head, not memories, echoes of other people's fears. It watches when you sleep. It buries them under the roots. Time doesn't pass here, it folds. Don't blink. It hates silence. Sarah clutched her head and fell to her knees, screaming. The voices stopped. Then one new voice calm, very close. Her own. "You were never meant to leave." She turned sharply and found herself back in the small clearing. The tree with the painted door was still there. Only now the door wasn't painted. It was open, blackness inside. Shadows moved just beyond the threshold, not walking, crawling. Sarah backed away slowly, but the trees behind her moved, reshaping to push her forward. No wind, no sound, just the wet creaking of the pine limbs shifting. Something was behind her, but every time she tried to look, it was gone, just out of sight, as if her fear alone gave it shape. She stumbled and fell against a tree. It groaned. No, moaned. The bark peeled back on her hand, revealing a human eye. It blinked. She screamed and ran again, back toward the door. It had started to close. The trees were sealing it up. She had no choice. She jumped inside. The air changed instantly. No forest, no light, only a long hallway, black stone floor, crimson walls, and hundreds of paintings. Portraits, each one a face, all of them alive. Eyes darted, lips moved silently. One painting whispered, "Don't let it touch you." Another, with Danny's face, sobbed, "It made me eat my own memories." At the end of the hallway stood a mirror, and next to it, Ava, or what was left of her. She stood completely still, her eyes black, her body rooted into the floor like a sapling. Branches pierced her arms, chest, and legs. "Sarah," she said softly, though her lips didn't move. "It's learning." Sarah stepped forward, choking back tears. "What is it?" Ava's head tilted slowly. "It was a god," she said, "before we had names, before we feared the dark." Her voice dropped lower. "And now it wants to be remembered." Sarah reached for her, but Ava's skin cracked like bark. She fell apart into ash and branches, and the mirror began to ripple. Sarah turned toward it. Inside, she saw herself, trapped in the forest, running in circles, screaming. The scene shifted. Now she was standing right here, in front of the mirror, hand outstretched. She blinked, and her reflection smiled. From the walls, the paintings began to hum, soft at first, then louder. Then words formed in unison from their mouths. "You open the door. Now it opens you." Sarah turned back, but the hallway had vanished. She stood once again among the pines. But now they all had faces. Trees surrounded Sarah like a sea of silent watchers. Each trunk was carved with countless faces, some screaming, some weeping, some smiling with the same twisted grin she'd seen before. The faces moved, blinking in unison. Their eyes followed her. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She reached out, trembling, to touch one. Cold bark, but under her fingers, the skin twitched. The face opened its mouth, whispering, "Remember me." She pulled back, stumbling. The forest groaned, a deep, vibrating sound that shook the ground beneath her feet. Her panic rose. Footsteps echoed behind her, slow, deliberate. She spun. Ava stood there, or what was left of her. Branches curled like thorns around her arms, and her eyes were black voids. "You cannot leave," Ava said, voice hollow but unmistakably hers. Sarah's legs trembled, but she forced herself to speak. "Why? What is this place?" Ava's head tilted. "A place where fear takes form, where memories become flesh and trees remember the forgotten." Sarah swallowed hard. "We need to get out." Ava shook her head. "The forest doesn't let go. It feeds on you." Sarah ran. The trees bent inward, closing around her, their faces morphing into her friends, her family, strangers she'd never met. Voices filled her ears, overlapping and screaming. "You're mine. Stay forever. Don't look away." She pressed her hands over her ears, but the voices drilled deeper into her mind. Suddenly, a low growl rose behind her. Sarah whirled to see a shadowy shape slipping between the trunks. Tall, faceless, but its body shimmered with countless tiny faces, each screaming in silent agony. The creature moved faster than her eye could follow. Sarah stumbled, falling to her knees. The creature was upon her, and then the world cracked open. Sarah woke alone on the forest floor, sunlight dappling through the canopy. Her heart hammered. Sweat soaked her clothes. She looked around. No faces on trees. No shadowy creature, just a quiet, peaceful forest. Had it all been a nightmare? Then she saw the scar on her wrist, a fresh, jagged line, as if something had scratched her deeply. She touched it and heard a whisper. "Remember me?" Sarah struggled to stand. The forest wasn't done with her yet. "Remember me." The whisper echoed through Sarah's mind like a distant, haunting melody. The scar on her wrist pulsed, warm to the touch. She tried to rub it away, but it stayed, as if branded into her skin. The forest around her was silent now, almost peaceful, but Sarah knew better. She stood slowly, wincing from the rawness in her arm, and began walking. Her steps were hesitant at first, unsure if the ground beneath her was real or just a memory. She needed answers. As she moved deeper into the forest, shadows gathered beneath the trees. The air thickened with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic like blood. Suddenly, a voice called out, faint and distant, "Sarah." She turned sharply, heart pounding. No one was there, just the trees, and a single, fluttering leaf drifting down. But the leaf carried a message. In the center of its surface, words appeared, glowing faintly. "Look inside." Sarah closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them to see a small pond ahead. The water was dark and still, a perfect mirror. She knelt by the edge and gazed into it. Reflected back was not her face, but a collage of memories. Faces of those who had come before: Danny, Max, Jaden, Ava. Each one trapped in the forest grasp. Suddenly, the water rippled and a voice whispered from its depths, "Do you remember?" Sarah's mind flooded with images. Her childhood home burning. Her brother's laughter, distant and fading. The first time she felt fear, real, suffocating fear. And then the face of the creature. Faceless, yet filled with the countless faces of its victims. She gasped. "It's a collector," she whispered. "It feeds on memories, on fear." A cold wind swept across the pond, and the surface shattered. Sarah stumbled back as figures emerged from the water, ghostly forms of the lost friends, their eyes pleading. "Help us," Jaden's voice echoed. "We're trapped," Danny whispered. "Don't let it take you," Max warned. Sarah clenched her fists. She wouldn't be another face carved into the trees. She would fight. But how do you fight a force that exists between time, memory, and fear itself? The forest closed in again. The whisper came once more. "Remember me." Sarah knew this was it. The forest was no longer just a place. It was a battleground. Her memories, her fears, and the souls of those lost all intertwined in a shadowy dance with the faceless creature that ruled here. She tightened her grip on the only weapon she had, a broken branch, jagged and sharp. The whisper followed her. "Remember me, remember me." The trees around her began to close in, their bark twisting into grotesque faces. The ground beneath her feet trembled. Suddenly, the faceless creature appeared, larger than ever, its skin rippling with hundreds of tiny, screaming faces, the faces of her friends. Sarah's heart shattered, but she stood firm. She shouted, "You don't own us. We remember you, but we are not yours." The creature paused, its many faces contorting in confusion and rage. Sarah closed her eyes. She focused on the memories of her friends, their laughter, their hopes. She screamed their names. Her voice echoed through the trees, breaking the silence. The faces on the creature's body writhed, then started to crack and peel away. The creature let out a terrible roar. Light burst from the forest canopy. The faces carved into the trees shattered like glass. The faceless creature convulsed, then began to dissolve, its many faces flying away like embers in the wind. Sarah fell to her knees, exhausted. She heard a soft voice, Ava's. "We're free, thanks to you." Sarah looked around. The forest had changed. The trees were just trees again. The sun shone bright. But as she turned to leave, she noticed the scar on her wrist. It was still there. A faint whisper tickled her ear. "Remember me?" Sarah froze, and then she understood. The forest didn't just want to trap them. It wanted to live, in memory, forever.